Hey Laura, how you doing?
Hey guys.
You look
Hey.
tired. You had a long day, huh?
Sorry. Yeah, we've been up, God, since yesterday, pretty much nonstop.
Yeah, so if everybody just give you a little tease on what Laura's been up to. She's been traveling all over Northern California working on the Leonard Lake Charles Ng case, and she's finding out a lot of interesting information, and she's talking to a lot of interesting people, and
Yeah.
they've both her and Rob Dick, private investigator bounty hunter, have been tracking people down and basically ambushing them and interviewing them and trying to extract information. So even when she's not inside prisons extracting information, she's out there in the field extracting information. And we're going to give you a bunch of information about that and one of our other podcasts. But today, what we're going to talk about is the second part of Bittaker tapes, the interviews that she has recorded over the years of talking to Bittaker. We did that last week. A lot of people liked it and thought it was very interesting and fascinating. And so we're gonna start that today. So Laura, just give us a little backstory on when you did talk to him and record him and how that flowed for you and what was going on in your head when he was telling you all this crazy stuff.
So these tapes are kind of early on when I first started, digging into Bittaker and his case. And he was like an onion. You just had to keep peeling him and peeling him, the layers back of his psychopathy, but also his stories and, how he tries to almost rationalize his own crimes in a way. And it's interesting to hear, especially these early tapes of when you go further and deeper into my interviews, you'll like actually hear the story change and the rationalization change as he keeps going. So what you're hearing today are the early tapes of Bittaker.
And does that happen a lot when you're talking to these serial killers? Like they kind of change their stories, they kind of soften up the narrative and all that stuff. Is that just kind of like a human nature thing that people do, or is that indicative to serial killers?
I would say it's human nature. I mean, even the witnesses, like all the ones we tracked down today, there was a lot of conflicting stories from what we know. So it's interesting, hearing from the witnesses and the serial killer, their version of events. And this is why we always check, the court files, the police discovery to make sure, everything is matching up.
Crazy. All right. Well, this first one is right where we left off last week, and it started about the subject is about you asked him about his psychiatrist telling him that he's no longer a psychopath and that he's at this point in his age. So we're going to play this. I mean, what just kind of set that up for us a little bit.
Yeah, so it was very misrepresented on the show, The Toolbox Killer. I did give commentary about it, but it was cut out. There is no such thing as, a magical cure or somebody's cured from antisocial personality. There's never been a documented case. There's no cure. I did get the psych evals from Berger, who's the head psychologist at San Quentin. And he noted there was a substantial change, an improvement in his, antisocial personality traits. And this is something we see very common with age too. Usually around early 50s is when they start to decrease. So it is a natural occurrence with age. But Berger had noted that he had seen a significant one with Bittaker and flew about 6 other psychologists out to also evaluate him. So as he's speaking, he's very excited that there is a noticeable improvement. Doctors are noticing it. And he uses the word cured. It's not cured. It's just there has been a noted improvement in his psychopathy.
Why do you think he was so excited about being cured?
Well, he's had psych eval since he was 15, 16, and they're all, showing, homicidal urges and sadistic personality disorder. everything you can think of has been noted in his psyche valves, all bad from teenage years until this is the first one he actually got, which is kind of like a good one. There's actually an improvement. And I think he was just really excited about that. And I think he was excited because Berger was excited and I was excited. So we were kind of like, oh, how did this, come about? Um, where did this improvement come from? What was the change? Was there a cause? Like Berger and I were very excited about, looking at him and trying to figure this out because this could be a breakthrough into psychopathy. And there have been some documented cases where it's just like Bittaker describes, a dam breaking, but we don't know the cause of it. So Berger and I were very excited, and Bittaker is excited because, this is his first, good psyche valve. And, he's
That's
seeing.
interesting. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm surprised that he cares about that. I find that
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I have a question for you about how long into the process of you interviewing him, how many years was it before he got this new evaluation?
I think it was 3 years in.
So, do you think revealing all this information and talking to you on a regular basis helped him kind of get to that point, you think?
I think it definitely did. I mean, he didn't have any sense of family or friends, really. I mean, all he had was Norris, his whole life. He felt rejected and abandoned by, his biological mother, his adoptive parents. He never just had anybody. And I think, with me, he started looking at me as like a daughter and Romeo as like a grandson. I didn't find this out until he died, that he carried Romeo's picture around the yard like a grandpa and with all the balloons around him, because he would always say to me, I never had a birthday party. And he said to me, like on his deathbed, make me make me a couple promises. And the first promise was to be a good mother. And I think that's why he carried the picture with Romeo and all the balloons, because it was like, I was being a good mother because he never had that birthday party. So he loved that picture of Romeo, one with all the balloons at the birthday party. So I think for him, having a sense of like belonging and family. And it's very interesting too, because I'm seeing that with Ing, and Rob is too. And when we just talked to a couple of the witnesses on the case, they were saying, Ing just wanted like that family or that belonging. And there's a lot of parallels I'm seeing to Bittaker and Norris on this case now too.
Yeah. How did that make you feel when he said was like Grandpa Bittaker for your son?
He never said grandpa. I'm just using that as like an analogy because
Oh,
of
okay. All
age.
right. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just thought like, yeah.
But I think, I mean, for me, it's really hard to forget about what he did. I commend you for being
No.
able to do this work, because for the victims and what they suffered, it's almost like, okay, he had this horrible childhood. He had these horrible things happen to him as a child, which is horrible.
Right.
But
Mhm.
how does that turn into the sadistic, psychopathic killing?
Well,
How does it
I mean, that's
turn?
part of the research, we're trying to find out. And, that's, I think, why Berger and I got so excited about this, like, kind of breakthrough. Like, is this a breakthrough that could lead to some type of treatment early on, early prevention type of thing? I think that's why Berger and I got so excited seeing this. Like, could this be, the way in, the key into psychopathy and early prevention for that? So we don't have to see these types of crimes and they're, victims, that we have to think about from these like horrendous crimes. It's all about prevention is this work.
Exactly. And I mean, it's interesting that there's a similarity with Ing, who also did like the most horrific things you could ever imagine. And that
Oh yeah.
with you and Rob going to see him regularly, it seems like there's some breakthroughs that no one's ever been able to do before.
Yeah. Because he hasn't talked in
Yeah.
40 years to anybody.
Nobody.
And
Yeah.
I have a question for you in regards to what you said about this happens a lot later in life with serial killers as they get older. Do you think the fact that the libido's gone, the sex drive's gone, the testosterone is limited, do you think that has something to do with it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's not really, I wouldn't even just qualify this as like serial killers. It's anybody with psychopathy or antisocial personality traits. You know, early 50s, they see the decrease, and it has a lot to do with, biological, elements that you're putting in, like libido, testosterone, that kind of stuff. And then the impulse controls, there's so many different factors in psychologically, biologically, that play into it. But we've seen, studies have shown that this actually starts to decrease early 50s. So age is a big factor.
Okay. All right. Well, let's play the first clip here. We'll talk about it.
So you were telling me your psychologist just said that you're not a sociopath anymore?
Psychiatrist. I've got a psychologist too, and he's a new replacement, and I'm not going to be seeing him. A guy named Berger, Dr. Berger, he's a psychiatrist.
And you're like cured, or what does he mean?
Well, sociopaths act in certain ways. I'm sure you know, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I haven't broken many laws in the last 37 years that I've been here. And didn't I write you about a little article about becoming fully human and how my emotions kind of broke open?
I did. It was fascinating to me because I hear that as you get older, you lose some of those sociopathic traits as you age. And I didn't know if it was just a theory or if it's been proven or if it was true. And then you told me that, and it's so intriguing.
So that was his opinion. I suppose he could run some sort of tests and verify it, but that becoming fully human incident was kind of a turning point. They had a piece on about Africa the other day about some drought over there in one of the countries, and one of the things they happened to mention was no food for the animals. And they showed, somebody mentioned that her goat had just given birth, but they didn't have any food for the goat, and showed an empty bowl with just a couple little bits in the bottom of it. I didn't show the goat, but here I just started crying over a hungry goat.
Wow.
I didn't even see from an empty bowl. That's how sensitive I've got.
So you were never sensitive before? Like you never cried? You never?
No, occasionally, but when I thought when I thought Leia killed or something, kind of cracked my emotions open somehow, broke some sort of barrier. Maybe changed things. So, but I don't know why it's not possible for a sociopath to change. Like you mentioned, aging is probably one of the biggest factors that affects that.
They said that
I am older now.
when you were younger, though, like, were you aware that you were a sociopath?
Well, I didn't really think about it. I don't think anybody mentioned it really until quite a few years later.
Like when you were younger.
You gotta remember, I hardly know what a normal person was supposed to act like because I was so isolated growing up.
Right, that's true. But did you ever think it was weird that you didn't feel like you saw somebody crying, or you didn't feel that response, or you saw empathy and you didn't really feel it? Did you ever feel like, oh, that's odd, I'm not feeling that?
Well, I occasionally myself, but I never really connected the two or noticed that I was missing anything. Again, that's back to the isolation. I was never hardly in a situation that I was aware of really hurting anyone other than, stealing stuff from mostly commercial enterprises. So it's connecting the two, being aware of it, it doesn't come necessarily automatically.
Right.
Kind of a taught experience, parent teaching your kids, hey, doing this hurts people and you shouldn't do it, and blah, blah, blah. I just, it's been hard to believe, but I just didn't have that type of parents. It was like I was a border living there,
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about it because I think he goes back, it goes into his childhood at that point.
Yeah, he
So
does.
that's really fascinating.
It
Just
is. Yeah.
the train of thought about how he's really the self-analysis. And I really think that I don't think he would have been able to access that self-analysis or at least articulate it the way he's articulating it now if you
Mhm.
hadn't started talking to him.
Yeah. And I think it was Hare, I believe, um, who wrote up the PCLR, how we scale from sociopath, psychopath, antisocial. And he has a quote, I believe it's him. It said, if you wonder if you are, you're not. And you kind of hear Bittaker when I say to him, did you ever think you were? He's like, no, never thought about it, which shows the traits, they just don't think about it. And the best
Mhm.
analogy I use for people who have antisocial personality is they don't have the deeper emotions that we have. So, you know, if we lose somebody in our lives, like it's traumatizing, we mourn, we feel it, we feel that loss. Somebody with antisocial personality disorders, such as sociopath, psychopath, when they lose someone, it's almost the same way as like when we lose a vehicle. It's like we might have liked that vehicle, it was handy. It got us from point A to point B, but in a couple days we'll go out and get a new car and that's it. So that's how kind of they are with the, people in their lives. It's almost like they're a vehicle, they're a means to an end. He describes his ex-girlfriend, that first rejection from high school. I said, when you lost her, how did you feel? And he was like, it was the equivalent to like losing my book of stamps. It was sad.
Book of
Like
stamps.
property.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because isn't that the trait of a narcissistic psychopath, though? It's like
Yeah,
they
well,
need to have that vessel to like feed off of.
Well, they're very parasitic. And then, yeah, narcissism is included in antisocial. It's one of like the traits. When you tally all the traits up, narcissism is included. So yeah, they look at people as property. They don't have that higher emotion, for that loss. So when he describes, his loss of the girlfriend as a book of stamps, the same way, it's very telling.
Yeah. And he went from treating someone like a book of stamps to getting emotional over a goat now. It was
Yeah.
almost like, like that Kodak moment commercials, those that people, someone's laying on the couch, they're kind of tired at night and they see that sad commercial or that heartwarming commercial and they start tearing up. That was his
Yeah.
Kodak moment.
Yeah.
So bizarre. When he was revealing that stuff, I mean, how did you react to it? Because it's like it was really it's like everything starts to unlock at that point. And
Hmm.
he starts spilling information, what's going on
Yeah.
in his brain.
Did you ever feel like he was just telling you that because it's what you wanted to hear?
Um, no, I really don't. I mean, because I wasn't really looking for him to like show empathy. I was more like, tell me about the crimes in your childhood. I wasn't asking for like a crying goat story. When I'm interviewing him. So no. I'm actually more at the time was asking more of like the nitty-gritty details. And he kind of wanted me to know about this, breakthrough he had, and even Berger noted it.
Yeah, what did he say?
He saw, I've only seen the psyche valves, and I've always wanted to talk to Berger. Unfortunately, I can't because of HIPAA. But through the psyche valves that I did see, he saw, he said, a noticeable, significant improvement.
Cool. All right, I think he starts going into his childhood here real quick. Hold on.
They would take care of the meals and the food, the rent, and the bedding and medicine. But it was hardly any communications otherwise. I'd be in my room fiddling around with something, and they'd be doing whatever they were doing. They didn't even talk to each other, so they didn't talk to me either. It wasn't quite good.
Did they ever say, like, I love you? Did they ever hug you? Anything?
Hardly. my father was very stoic, and he almost never heard anything from him. And my mother was a little more assertive and talkative, but she didn't talk very much. And they most all the time, both of them worked. So.
You want to stop?
And those were the adopted parents.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What happened to his birth mother?
She gave up him and his Irish twin brother Charles to the different aunts and uncles in the family. She ended up moving to Texas and had 4 more kids. And the other 4 kids, I've read reports from his appeals on them, and they said living with the bio mom was really horrific.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Did he ever reach out? Did he have a relationship with any of the siblings?
His Irish twin brother Charles, I guess the 2 adopted parents got them together like 3 or 4 times when they were living in Florida. But that was it. That was the only one he ever talked to. And then I had brought up.
So is he still alive, the brother?
No, he died. I think it was early 2000s. I've spoken with Charles's daughter though.
So when did Bittaker find out that his mom had another family? That must have been traumatic for him.
Yeah. I think he found out pretty early on. I think he's always kind of known she went away and, had 4 more kids that she kept. And when I had the report from, his, I guess it would be his younger sister, but the oldest of the 4 she kept, and I read the report to him and I said, you would have had a horrific life if you had been with your mom. And that was one of the times he just got really upset. And he was like, no, I would have been with my mom. I should have been with my mom. It's
really hard to have empathy for him.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad as a
really,
child.
really hard for me to just say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. I mean, that's the thing. It's like analyzing his brain and this antisocial psychotic personality disorder. Is there any...
Well, if you look at it, I mean, this is why I always say like the perfect storm. I mean, you're looking at genetics, which would be, the genetic components to it, but also then the nurture mixed in is creating the perfect storm for something like a serial killer to emerge from. But then I have some serial killers with great upbringings. There's nothing there, which is even more
Douglas
confusing.
Clark, wasn't he one of them?
Yeah, he had a very, very privileged.
Childhood.
Very.
I mean, I think it's twisted DNA. I think there's something there with the genetics. Something's just wrong.
Did he ever have any severe head injuries when he was younger?
Funny enough, according to Douglas Clark, this was after Bittaker passed away. He had called me and he said, did you ever feel the back of Bittaker's head? And I said, no, why would I ever have felt the back of his head? He goes, it was flat. And, that happens with infants when you just leave them laying a lot. And I was like, his head was flat. Like I hadn't seen, he always had hair even in the back when he was dying.
Mm-hmm.
But Doug said he had like tapped on the back and it was just like flat. Like he was like flat. So that was always something I noted, because that's very interesting. As far as like frontal lobe head injuries, no.
I think it's genetics. I
think
it's DNA. I think it's twisted.
Well, if he was a neglected baby and they just left him in the crib for very long periods of time, that could happen too. But independent of that, I mean, I know a lot of people, namely like even personally, like my mom had a horrible upbringing. I mean, granted, she was a woman, but she wasn't a man, so it's a little different. But probably just as bad, if not worse, than Bittaker. And I know a lot of people have had probably worse off situations growing up as well. So, I mean, I guess it's a factor, but I think at the end of the day, it's like Cindy said, there's something else lurking in there.
Genetics. It has to be because.
I mean, I brought up the head injury only because I remember when we first spoke to Wayne Adam Ford, You remember you telling us that he had some sort of head injury at some point,
Yeah.
and that was like his switch, or one of the switches.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there have been cases of serial killers where right after that head injury, something just switches. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been cases of those, but you're right. It's almost like people who have had the trauma, especially in childhood, it's like almost like a fork. It's like some people choose to help and some people choose to hurt. And it's like that fork.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a conscious choice. He made that
Yeah.
choice. We all
Yeah.
have free will. He made a choice to do some evil things. Did anyone ever do a brain scan on him?
No. This is something Dr. White and I have talked about, getting more brain scans done. And there's actually some other tests we've talked about, like going to the prisons and doing that have not been done before.
Oh God, it'd be so great to do that with Ing and really get to see what would cause
Oh, yeah.
someone to turn into the devil like that. Because he's,
yeah.
I mean, it's awful what these people have done.
Yeah, I don't know how many hoops you'd have to jump through to try to get that to go, though. I mean, it's like you're having a hard enough time just dealing with
I
the prison
know.
just to get interviews.
It's true. Well, that's why we were talking about. There's one test we can do in person without any equipment. So we were talking about doing that one, and it actually can show us different parts of the brains that are working or not working, or different areas.
I mean, it's important research because it can
It
really
is.
help you understand if you have a child who's exhibiting antisocial behavior at a young age and you take them to get a brain scan and you can understand that there's something wrong. Maybe there's a way to fix it before something tragic happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Because with all these school shootings and all these mass shootings, they're all teenagers. So
I know.
as a society, we have a big problem. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this research is crucial to understanding what causes. Just because they're teenagers doesn't mean they're not serial killers. These are serial killers. This is the modern day serial killer, are teen mass shooters.
No,
Yeah,
spree killers.
Spree killers. It's the same thing. So, we really need to understand what's causing this in order to stop
No, we
it.
do. We really
with
do.
them, though, I think, and I'm just speculating here, but with the spree killers and the school shootings, I think it's less as opposed to serial killers. Serial killers seem to be more narcissistic, and because they want to get away, they want to keep on doing it, and it's more, they get more fixated as opposed to an event that the spree killers create, and knowing that they probably aren't going to come out alive.
Yeah. And it was actually Wayne Adam Ford. Him and I have had many discussions about the school shooters and the spree killers. And, he said, you're seeing this now, the uprising of all these spree killers and mass shooters. And it's with all these teenagers, this certain time frame. And the peak age of serial killing is 27. So, we've had discussions. Is this, cluster where we're seeing all these mass shooters, in 10 years when they hit that age of 27, is this same group, the ones that didn't go into a school, with a gun, is there going to be a mass wave of more serial killers from this?
That's what I'm saying. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's keep on listening.
I remember when I met you in person, it really always stuck out to me. I think I said it in the letter too. You said when you had moved to Florida, so isolated, you had that guy across the street from you. Do you remember?
Across the street.
Yeah, and he had tools. Was he in construction or something, or a handyman, or
The tools. It was Leesburg, Florida. He was a tool salesman.
yeah?
He went out and sold tools, traveling tool salesman. So he was usually gone, and just his wife was in.
Were you ever close to him? Like, did you ever get close to him at all?
That was just the only neighbor we had. It was.
I'm sorry. The fact that it's a tool salesman is just crazy.
What did you think of that when he said that?
That was in my first in-person interview, and he was telling me about his childhood. And I was like, were there any neighbors around? He was like, oh, a tool salesman. I was like, wait, what? And it was kind of just like a passing comment. And you see in my interviews, I keep going back to it because I'm like, it's just too coincidental. That would be the one neighbor he remembers is the tool salesman.
Yeah, I just had to stop there. 'cause it was just-
it's shocking.
It is.
At least a mile before it was the next residents of any sort passed by and maybe wandering around the grounds looking for snakes or turtles or, whatever was there. There was nobody to play with. Come home from school, I was all by myself.
The reason it had struck me is because I just remember you mentioning him, and he was your only neighbor within miles when you were isolated. And it's just ironic you later go on to become, quote unquote, the Toolbox Killer. Why don't you tell me about the first killing, the first victim? You said that you and Roy had just snatched her off the sidewalk.
Yeah, we were just driving around each area one weekend. This was a Sunday afternoon. He spotted some girl walking down the street, so I turned around and she turned up some side street when it was going up the hill, stopped at the corner to play with some new kittens. And then she crossed the street to the wrong side, and I drove up behind her and hold on to the wrong side, and up beside her, said, hey, you want to ride? Want some grass, blah, blah, blah. And she said no, kept on walking down the street. And I drove off ahead of her, did a U-turn and parked on the side she was walking down, somebody's driveway. And all I got out, it was kind of a bushy area between the sidewalk and the street. There were some bushes there. We got behind one of them, and I come down the street and tapped him. He jumped out and grabbed her. A couple little quick screams, and they dragged her into the van. I closed the door, and I drove up the hill off.
Yeah.
What did you think of that story, that he just rolled up on some teenager? And
Cindy. Yeah, Cindy was walking home from the church meeting. Very safe area, right in Redondo. And what he doesn't say in this one, he tells me later on, Cindy was walking up, so she had said, no, I don't want any grass, I don't want to ride. She did everything right. And they drove off ahead of her, and Roy got out and pretended like he was fixing something on the van. And Bittaker was watching her through the rear view mirror. And he saw, like, when she walked up and saw them, she actually paused because she was like, oh, these creepy guys, you could tell. And she was like hesitant about to turn and go across the street. And Bittaker noticed this slight pause, like she was already thinking about it. And he shouts behind him, is it fixed yet? What's going on? And Roy answers him like, no, still needs some work. That's how perceptive these predators are. They can notice 1 second of hesitation and do something to counteract it, which is what Bittaker did with Norris. And then she kept walking along that path.
because her instincts were like, get the hell away from these people.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
always trust that first instinct. Don't
First
hesitate.
instinct. Yeah.
And Cindy's still
Yeah.
missing.
Still missing. Yep.
Do you think she's in that cave at that lake location?
No, we have Cindy and Andrea's location.
Oh,
These
okay.
are the ones he pinpointed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I forgot.
Mhm.
Cindy's
Yeah.
still missing, but he gave you the location of where she's at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's continue the playlist here.
For weapons, I was living in a bad part of downtown LA for a while on Skid Row, basically. And I had to catch a bus from there to work until I got around to buying the van. So I just got a squirt gun and filled it up with full strength ammonia. So if anybody got to messing with me, I just squirt them in the face with that.
Wow. Did you ever do it?
No, never had to. Not long after that, I bought a replica 45 automatic and used to carry that around in a belt holster or shoulder holster. People would be able to see that pretty easily. They wouldn't mess with me.
Did you buy the van? Like, you bought the van, like, shortly after that, right?
Yeah, I bought it. It was May, I think it was May or June. I got out in December. About 6 months after I got out.
Was it supposed to be like a work van, or was it supposed to be
something that I could live in an emergency in case of need? Yeah, something big enough to carry around whatever I own.
Yeah. How did you? So all the victims are really just.
Okay, so let's talk about the van.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the squirt gun with the ammonia.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's like,
Didn't he plan on doing that at the beach?
Yeah, they were going to put some type of acid in the squirt guns and give them to kids on the beach and watch the kids like squirt people and maim people on the beach. He did use the squirt gun full of chemicals on survivor Jan Mallon. She was a 29-year-old flight attendant in Manhattan Beach who was coming home from work. She was getting out of her car in her garage, and Bittaker, she saw the van getting backed up and the door was open. The light in the van was open. And Roy was backing up, and she thought that was so strange. And then she sees Bittaker coming from the side and starts squirting her in the face. And then he threw her to the ground, was trying to drag her. She was like about 3 feet from the van, and she couldn't see anything. And she was like, her whole chest, arms were burning with chemicals. And thank God she was just screaming, bloody murder. And all the neighbors rushed out, and it scared off Roy. And Bittaker ran up the street, saved her life.
just the thought of having the idea of just putting those chemicals in a squirt gun, it's bizarre. First to use it as protection for himself, then he probably like, oh, I can use this on victims as well. I mean, we knew he was very smart. He has a high IQ, and he worked as a.
But it's just so sadistic.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He enjoyed torturing people.
Mm-hmm.
He did.
That's the scary part. And I mean, this poor woman is coming home from work. She's not even thinking. She's probably thinking about what she's gonna make for dinner.
Yeah.
And she's in her garage. Did she pull into her garage?
He pulled it. Yeah, it was a detached garage. Very safe neighborhood, Manhattan Beach, right? Like 3 blocks from the beach. Very safe. And she was just parking her car, getting out of her detached garage to go into her place. And yep, they had been trailing her for blocks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, that's the part that's so scary. Like, you never know who's watching you. And that's the thing with like social media now. Like, you don't know who's looking at you. You have no idea who's watching you.
Yeah.
No idea.
I know we were trying to track her down, that woman, to see if we can talk to her. I'd love to hear her story.
Yeah.
I've spoken with Dan, and yeah, it's wild to hear it straight from her, what happened too.
Mm-hmm.
And she never recovered fully from this. She went on to.
I'm surprised she talked to you.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, I've spoken with so many witnesses, even now on Ing's case. They'll tell me the whole story, but a lot of them don't want to say it publicly.
Sure.
Once I've talked, sat down and spoken with these killers, and I've, reviewed the case files, it's, and I go to the witnesses, there's almost like a kinship, because I know exactly, the horror they've really lived through. And I don't think a lot of people can truly comprehend, what they have lived through, but someone who has sat down with the killer and read these court transcripts and, heard it from all the other witnesses, and it's a kinship of understanding, what the horror and how much their lives have been impacted from this, violent crime. And it stays with them forever.
You have all the intimate details of their trauma.
Right.
So, all right. Well, here we got some more here.
So all the victims are really just victims of opportunity, right?
Basically, yeah. Other than the first one, she was snatched off the sidewalk. She didn't want to take a ride. So.
Say the sisters were hitchhiking, right? You picked them up hitchhiking?
Well, they weren't sisters; they were just friends.
Oh.
Gilliam and Lamp and Gilliam, Lamp and Gilliam. They were just friends. That's the strangest pair of the bunch. They were coming from their houses, which were kind of inland, and they walked down to the beach area. They crossed the highway to 101 that runs along the coast. Where are you? You're back east, so you don't know. And they stopped about a block from the beach and sat on a park bench and put their thumbs out. And the whole place was loaded with cars coming in there on their way to the beach, so it was a traffic jam all in there, in that area. And why they're sitting there trying to hitch a ride when they can walk to the beach in 5 minutes, it made no sense at all. Whether they were trying to get some boys to pick them up and to party with, or it's always been a mystery. It just made no sense at all.
You kept them the longest, right? Like 48 hours or something?
Yeah.
Was there a reason?
No, just got time. I got nothing better to do. Might as well, try to enjoy it anyway.
Yeah.
Kind of enjoying it. That's the quote of the day.
Mhm.
Just
So
have
awful.
time on his hands, sit back and enjoy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the part that's like, he was a sadistic psycho. And now with age, he's not anymore.
Well, no, he's definitely still. Yeah,
I
for
thought it was
sure.
the thing I find interesting is just how he remembers all the details.
They remember it like photographic memory. They all do. It is imprinted in their minds. They can recall the slightest detail. I always say to people, where were you on 9/11? These, whether it's traumatic or happy, your wedding day or something, those moments in our lives get imprinted in our brains, just like it does with serial killers.
Yeah, but very detailed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
just the fact that he described, he goes, I don't know why they were just doing there, whether they're hitchhiking, they're right across from the beach. He's trying to speculate on why they were doing it.
Yeah.
Like little nuances like that are.
Well, I had played, this was early on. I want to say it was like a year in to interviewing Bittaker. I had played this for some FBI agents at a conference I was at, who had interviewed him too. And I had said, I just wanted to compare notes, and their mouths dropped. And I was like, what? And they were like, he just said it was Norris the entire time. When he said he wasn't even there, no details. And so
wow.
when I think I did play him that clip, and they were just like, their mouths dropped because they're like, he's never gone into detail, and he just does it like you just ask a question and he just goes straight into it. And I was like, so he's never done this before. They're like, no. They're like, he just said he wasn't even there. It was all Norris. So when I heard that and going back to these tapes and just how quickly he's answering and going into these details, I was really mind blown. And even what you're going to see, I guess, when I'm talking about the Onion of later on tapes, when he says, they were sitting on the park bench talking about Jackie and Leah. They were not just a block away from the beach. They're a couple blocks. But he tries to blame the girls, the victims, for just getting in the van. Like it's their fault. And then he says, well, not Cindy. She didn't want to take a ride. Ha ha. I can't even go into that one, but the way he just victim blames, and then you'll hear later on, if he tries, well, they got in the van. I'm like, not to be raped and murdered. Like, Larry, come on. And he'll just be like, you're right. Yeah. Okay. But you see this progression of all right, let's cut the bullshit kind of as you keep going forward and get more comfortable. And we're getting to that point with Ing right now too.
Yeah, because you're showing up and you're doing the work, and he
Consistency.
consistently,
Right.
he's trusting
Right.
you guys. So it's fascinating that you're able to get him to talk like that,
Yeah.
because they all say they didn't do it. I mean, even every single one of them, that's their MO. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Wrongful conviction. I'm not guilty. You know, I'm
Police
innocent.
corruption. I'm innocent.
Police
Yeah.
corruption, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's always the same story. So when you hear
It
him
is.
actually saying that he did do it, it is interesting.
I know, and this is what we need, you know, to understand the mindset, the psychopathy. Like, this is what we need, is to hear these truthful moments come out from their mouths about what happened. And even if their warped sense of, you know, rationalization of it, you know, we're still able to extract a ton of information just from that, just from observing them and how they speak and what they're saying and how they are rationalizing it in their own minds, you know. It tells us a lot.
Yeah. And you basically create an environment for them to be vulnerable with you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's something that they've been always very guarded about, all this information, you know, because some of them have these fantasies about appeals and who knows, you know, if they can get out. I mean, I was just reading today about Polyclass's murderer could possibly get out.
No.
Yes.
No.
Just read an article that he might.
No, that was awful. I was there. I was in San Francisco. I was in Marin County when that happened.
He's on
That's
death
terrible.
row. Are they overturning his death penalty?
How?
Yeah, it was an article. I mean, it was the headline. I just read the first couple lines, like literally right before we started the
Oh,
podcast.
Nina needs to
Oh
get
my
involved
God.
with
And
that.
yeah, it just came out like literally tonight. So I was
I'm
just
seeing
like,
Bart Class on Wednesday.
Yeah, and Nina. So Nina
And
definitely
Nina,
will.
yeah.
yeah, you'll probably find more out about it then.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
that story is one of the most horrific stories I've ever heard. That poor little girl, she's so pretty.
Yeah,
Not far from where you are right now.
exactly.
I know. Very close.
All right.
Let's play another one.
One more, and then
we have time for one more.
47 minutes.
Did you like one of the victims? I feel like one of those girls you like in a sense.
Gillian was really gorgeous.
Did you want to kill her, or did you just want to hold her captive?
No. Well, back in '59, when I was a prisoner in a nut house, 19 years old, and I developed a fantasy since I had so much trouble meeting girls and blah, blah, blah. I would figure out a way to build a large house or small city underground somewhere in that desolate area. Then I managed to go out and kidnap anonymously selected girls to take their, and we would pretend, both her and I, not pretend, I would set it up so that I could pretend that both of us were captives of some alien culture and we were on a spaceship headed for some foreign planet to repopulate. You know, I never wanted to kill them.
Stop. Do you think that's true? That he didn't want to kill them?
This is actually really true with sexual sadists. Is a lot of them just want to hold them captives, and the killing is just, you know, an effect from the torture. I mean, they still want to torture, you know, their victims and harm them, maim them, you know. So the killing is kind of like an after effect of what they really want to do. But the fantasy, just like Lake and Ing, with the bunker or this underground city of these captives, like almost identical. I was just saying that to Rob today. I was like, Bittaker's fantasy is identical to Lake and Ing's. Like, it's,
and that's why that
crazy
space
to
we
know about.
found, that space we saw, is so terrifying.
Which one?
I
The
know.
crawl space.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question. If there's, like, let's just say an average guy who's consistently joking about wanting to keep you captive, like as a joke. Like, oh yeah,
Well, that's
is
what
that
Lake
something
did.
women should be aware of?
I think
Definitely.
Well, wait, I mean,
100. Yeah, well, that's what Lake was doing. Like half the witnesses we talked to today, they're like, he was always talking about it. Operation Miranda, having a captive, like always talking about it, joking about it, and nobody took him seriously. And that's what you hear with
Right.
so many of these stories, like, oh, we just didn't take him seriously. Yeah, if somebody's even just joking about wanting to have somebody captive or fantasizing about it, it's a
Yeah.
huge red flag. Yeah,
or a
definitely.
very possessive boyfriend who doesn't let
Yeah,
a girlfriend or wife go out by herself and do anything, and keeps her inside, and I mean,
yep,
stuff happens all the time. We hear about people being chained up in houses and kept in cages.
yep.
but the fact that it's so parallel to Ing and Lake, what do you think about
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, it's crazy. Especially I was listening to one tape with Lake just recently, and he said, I want to make it a series of underground kind of buildings. And that was something Bittaker had stated to me so many times too. Like he had that fantasy of like not just being one, but like almost like an underground, like multiple buildings underground. And he was going to have the same thing. It was a bomb shelter, Armageddon. You heard him, aliens invaded. And I used to always say to him, like,
Mhm.
Bittaker, this is that movie, Cloverfield.
Yeah.
Exact plot to it. His fantasy actually dates prior to that movie when it actually came out, though. Funny enough. But that is exactly like Lakes. He was saying, Armageddon's coming and this is just a bomb shelter. And that's what Bittaker had said. If he ever built one, he was going to be like, it's just a bomb shelter, but
Mm.
really it's a dungeon.
Yeah. Well, it's
It's a dungeon.
just like,
It's a dungeon.
Silence of the Lambs, the pit he kept the girl in,
Yep.
inside his house. It's just crazy,
Yes.
Okay. Terrifying.
terrifying. All right.
Unfortunately, I've
Yeah.
heard people say things like that before.
Do we have time for one more?
As a joke. I knew someone who used to say stuff like that as a joke, and I would always be like, it's not a joke.
Who said that? You knew?
People that way I knew.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I know, but it was like a joke. And I was like, it's not a joke.
Yeah,
I would
it's
get upset and be like, that's not a joke. Why are you saying that to her?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's a serial killer.
Yeah.
Let's do one more real quick. This is crazy.
Why didn't you just hold him captive? Was it because you didn't have space to do it?
Didn't have who?
You didn't have like enough room. You didn't have a cabin in the woods. You didn't have the means.
Yeah, I had not really nowhere to go. Probably could have extended it by working shifts in the man for a while. But it was the surprising part of all this is that most of it wasn't planned in any really extent. It was Roy almost got busted kidnapping some girl on the way to high school graduation, and she managed to escape. He calls me at work in the middle of the night, come get me, I'm hiding out. I don't know if they attacked me or not. I told him, hey, just quit this and we'll go out together and do this. And really didn't think through all the consequences, and that's how it got started.
When did you and Roy start like talking about doing? Was this when you guys were locked up together?
No, there was a certain amount of talk in prison before we were paroled, but nothing really detailed or bullshit sessions. Hey, you can do this, you can do that, blah blah this, blah blah that. There was nothing really planned.
I don't believe that.
That is such bullshit.
Total
No, they
bullshit.
started planning, what was it, 2 to 3 years prior in prison. I mean, the whole idea from the ice pick came from a movie they saw in prison. They had been planning this for a long time, a very long time. Yeah.
Crazy.
Mhm.
Well,
Wow.
fascinating stuff. I mean, I'm sure we got plenty more where that came from, and
So
you have
many
stuff,
more.
and you're accumulating stuff from the other serial killers there. It's really fascinating to see how their minds work and how you're able to really tap into that, and like I said, create a vulnerable environment for them so they feel safe to tell you all this stuff, because it's
Yeah.
granted, with Bittaker, I think he knew he was dying, so he could do that. But still, I mean, a lot of these guys aren't dying, and they're still opening up to you that way. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, Bittaker didn't know he was dying until the last 5 months. Yeah, I think it
okay,
was really. He got the cancer the 5 months, and then we had 5 months. He was put me as next of kin, and we were in a mad dash to get the exact points. But the 4.5, nearly 5 years.
how does that feel to be like listed as next of kin to a serial killer? I mean, I know why you do it, so you can get information and you get access
Right.
to all their files.
Yeah, everyone's like, "What did he leave you?" And I'm like, "Headache, a case." Like, no, it was only to
Bad
get
dreams?
past the red tape.
Nightmares.
Yeah, exact nightmares. That's what he left me. No, it was only to get past the red tape, listed as next of kin, to give me more access to the case once he was gone. That was all, purpose of it. So I don't really think of myself as like real next of kin. It's just like, yeah, it's just like, here's the case. Good luck after I'm gone.
Right.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Well, Laura, you are a rock star. Laura has
You are.
been up since probably the crack of dawn this morning, drove like 6 hours, and then did this.
Yeah.
So thank
Right now,
you.
it's like it's
Yeah.
11:15.
It's 11:15 at night.
Yes.
So thank you for
Yeah.
doing it so late. But
We have a lot more
there's
to
so
come
much
after.
stuff. I can't wait for you to tell us what happened today
So
and
much happened
what's
today.
going on. And we'll
Mhm.
reveal that in the next coming weeks when we start talking about the in case a little bit more. But
This was the first time in 10 years since I've been doing cases where I was so overwhelmed with the amount of witnesses. Like it was like one after another. Like we couldn't talk to all of them at once. Like it was really crazy.
Yeah, I know
But we
you
got
guys talked to us earlier in the day, and you say, "Oh, yeah, well, because you talked to the one person, yeah, we're gonna heading back," and then and I like, "Are you guys almost home yet?" And he goes, "No, we haven't even left yet.
Right.
We ran into
Yeah.
all these other people, and they started spilling their guts." So,
Yeah.
kudos to you and Rob for doing all that important work, and we'll just continue, watching and reporting your journey, and
Yeah.
go get some sleep.
yeah.
I am.
All right.
Thanks for staying
Laura.
up, guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.